Hello, Julie.
Hello, Don.
Good to see you again.
And you as well?
I gotta say to everyone that is tuning in, we've had this call last week. And to my horrific surprise, when I was going into, releasing the video, I couldn't find the recording. So I had to shuffle things up here because what we covered in our call last week was just gold. Right? There's so many good things that needs to be shared. And I'm hoping that with today's condensed call, because I know you're taking your precious time out to speak with me. It's a Saturday morning here, which would be a Friday night there.
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm going to do like rapid fire. And
Got it.
I want to share this to our community. I think it's so valuable. And just to give a quick background on who you are, Julie, I mean, you are an educator. You've been in the education industry for about 20, 25 years, right?
About 20.
Yeah. And you and I have known each other for close to 3 years now, right? We've been working together and helping our clients for a better part of 3 years. And you've been doing excellent work. Your track record and the fact that you're so invested in our clients and their journey in acquiring their fluency in second language is phenomenal. And I want to share your story and what you do with your students to our entire community here. So
Okay, great.
thank you for having coming on board again.
My pleasure.
And so straight to the point, right? The first question that I had was regarding small talk. If you can remember, a lot of our clients now are coming in and they're reaching this high level of fluency in their technical field, right? They're fine. They can converse. They can have a conversation without any interruption. However, they're running into an obstacle with small talk, right? So my question to you in our first call that we had last week was, what are you doing with your students to help our students with their small talk ability? And if you can kind of just take us through what you're doing with your students and maybe even share what small talk is, that would be great.
Sure. A lot of my clients, like you said, have a very high functioning level of technical speaking terms, so they can carry on a conversation with a client in terms of making a presentation, sharing information about a project they've been working on. But where they struggle and where they want to enhance their learning is when it comes to those moments when you're networking, those elevator pitches, the time kind of before the presentation starts and beyond, which is where they're trying to talk with potential clients, current clients, colleagues, and they're finding themselves faltering when it comes to both listening, that receptive language, and then of course expressive language. So an important part for me is when I noticed we were doing a lot of the HBR articles, they're sprinkled with really great figurative language, those idioms, excuse me, and the slang phrases that we commonly use in the English language. So one thing that I really focused on is when we're practicing these small talk in these moments together, is I'm being very mindful when I'm sitting down to plan for our sessions, is that I'm sprinkling in these same expressions that I know are going to come up when they're talking with native speakers. And so that they're equipped to not only understand them, but begin that reciprocation process where they're able to give them, use them in their own conversation in a really fluid and fluent way. So for example, I had a client last week who we had read an article a few days prior where it talks about something being off the cuff. Or we talked about, let's just put a pin in it. Or another really good expression is, I don't really know if our client's mindset was in what we were presenting. And a colleague from another office had said to him, she really seemed out to lunch. And he was confused by those phrases. So what I tried to do then, almost like a post test to kind of catch him, like a pop quiz, is when he and I were talking just very casually about a different article or TED Talk, I tried to throw those in there. Like, yeah, I noticed when the speaker made this connection about the fintech world, it seemed like she wasn't quite grounded in reality, like pretty out to lunch, wouldn't you say? So then he was able to use that same phrase as well. You know, he smiled, he recognized that I was basically asking him, do you remember this? Can you pull that from your memory and remember the meaning of it without there being any type of ebb in our conversation? You know, so he smiled and he said, yes, you know, and then I had to laugh because at the end of our session, I said, you know, we got pretty far on this article, but let's pick it up next week. And he said, yes, let's put a pin in it and we'll revisit it later. So he was impressed with himself. I was proud of him, you know, so now he feels like these are phrases that not only can he understand when he's talking with others, but there's ones that he can use as well that gives him a little bit of confidence that he's on par with other native speakers.
Correct. And you bring an excellent point. I mean, it's not like they're going to learn all of these expressions and idioms in one day, right? So the fact that, you know, you're laying the groundwork and saying, look, it's going to be a day-by-day process, a session-by-session process. And the way I can help you is actually include it in my own speech when I'm speaking with you. And when you do that, Julie, yes, of course, we're going to be helping our students with those expressions and popular idioms that we are always using. It's also helping them with their listening and comprehension, which is the main point, right?
Key for them.
I had one student that I talked to last week, and actually it was a few days ago, and he's working with a lot of colleagues from Texas.
Oh, okay. So it's dialect.
Yeah, it's dialect too. And he was saying like one of the expressions that they used on him, which just went totally over his head, was he said, "How are you doing today?" And I think his colleague said, "Another day, another dollar." You know?
Yeah.
And for him, he had no idea what that was.
Right. Is it good? Is it bad? Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, what? So when our students are paired up with their coaches here, right? Our coaches are aware, right? We're aware of your situations. We know your background, and we will do everything we can to use as much expressions and idioms as possible in a natural way so that you can learn it in class and it can equip you in future situations, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So with that, I kind of want to segue into the power of a coach, right? I think there's a misconception in this industry where a teacher just shows up for the 1 hour class or 40-minute class and you're never going to see them again until the next class, right? Sure. Could you take us through your definition or your perception of what a coach is?
Okay. You know, to me as a coach, I'm like a personal assistant in many ways. For me, the coach experience is what sets Donley and Company apart from other companies that are out there, is that it's very curtailed. It's for you. It's tailored to you. So I know one thing that I am always cognizant of doing is that R&D, that research and development. Our first session is all about me getting to know you. I want to know about your interests. I want to know about your fields. I have a client right now that's really big into fintech. She's a really high-powered finance lady. That's not my world, but I go out of my way because this is part of what being a great coach is, to give her that experience. So I'm looking, I've got like my RSS feeds on, I've got information, like I'm looking on, you know, Apple News, I'm looking at Forbes, and I'm looking for this information about, you know, what are the credit card trends, because that's kind of her field, line of work specifically. What are the credit card trends in the US? How are they matching to what she's seeing in Korea? What are the new examples of e-commerce? You know, in the United States, we're seeing a lot of action with Venmo and Afterpay and, you know, like peer-to-peer. You know, how does that relate to what she's seeing in the Korean marketplace? And here's a good example. She's heading off to a convention this week in Singapore. So she told me that she'll be encountering fellow colleagues from the Australian office and the office from India. So prior to this week, I went online and really pulled some information about, you know, what are the current trends right now, economy-wise, financially? What are the markets looking like in India? What are the markets looking like in Australia? Because I know that she's going to be meeting counterparts in this conference setting, and I want her to be able to be the one who can make these connections. Like, you know, I noticed, you know, that the Prime Minister of Australia recently, you know, and then she's got that. And I said, you know, just like how the expression, just like me going a little bit extra further step to include information I know is going to be meaningful to her and in her work, she's making that same great connection with a potential colleague, and networking in that same positive way. So for me, the coach and client experience is not only is it tailored, but it's meaningful. It's all about building a relationship. So, I'm invested in you. I'm invested in your journey. I'm interested in what you do. And it's really, that's the payback for me as well. I'm learning so much more about, I have a client that, is a lawyer. I have a client who works in sales for Samsung. So all the things that I'm learning, it's like me trying to take in as much information, which gives them that great expressive language factor, because I'm always questioning them, like, what does this mean? Am I understanding this correctly about, this enterprise, this news article that I read? And it's also allowing them to listen to me, like to listen to the questions I'm asking. So it's really value added. I don't know that everyone knows that, when you sign on to be a Donley client, there's not this curriculum, it's not just this box that these coaches use. It's specific, it's for you, and it's meant to take something off your plate. So when we're talking, I want to talk about something that's meaningful to you and that elevates you as someone in your workplace that maybe knows a little bit more about emerging ideas that another colleague next to you doesn't. And it's me kind of doing the footwork for you, so that when we're talking together, we're focusing on your English, but we're role playing. We're getting you ready for conferences. Everything I do for you is in reaction to something that you have going on or a goal you've set for yourself.
In reaction, as well as, from what I know you do, is anticipate. That's something that I want to also cover with you, because a lot of the coaches would take away this golden nugget. And from what I remember that you saying was, you will actually anticipate with your student future business situations. For example, the conference that your client is going to, and you are doing personal R&D into that economy, the trends in that marketplace, and sharing that news and information to your student, so that he or she is equipped with knowledge and information, and to initiate small talk, to engage and to be part of the conversation. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I think sets them apart and makes them memorable in that situation.
Okay. So then my last point with you would be role playing. Because I know that's also significant in your lessons. And like you said, we're not confined to this box of curriculum. It's actually very creative. And you're also reacting in that, hey, if a student says they have a conference call or they've got a presentation next week, we will help you, right? Can you take us through maybe some of your examples of role playing and how that kind of plays into your curriculum?
Yeah, like one thing I've noticed about some of the clients that I've worked with is that the Korean market and a lot of job markets specifically allows for the movement between companies, between jobs. So a lot of the clients that I work with are looking to further their career, which is why they've come to Donley in the first place. They know that the acquisition of English fluency is going to catapult them into new opportunities. So in this instance, a lot of them are preparing for interviews, or they're preparing, whether it's in-house or it's in another company. They're looking to take on a new role. They're being offered a position or an interview by a startup. And it seems to me there's, several iterations, first interview, which is kind of a weed out, second, third, fourth. And lately I've had the pleasure of working with a couple of clients that are working to transition themselves. So we do a lot of role play. I envision myself as the person from HR or, someone from that firm. And I'm asking them questions that I think are going to related to questions that you're going to hear. And we're role playing, let's give you a few phrases that I know you're going to be comfortable to say. If you're nervous about your English, let's find some phrases. Let's find words. So that I notice a lot of my clients say, they say to me, like, when I go to speak, I feel like I'm speaking very much word by word. I don't have these phrases in my back pocket that I can pull. So sometimes it makes me sound disfluent. And one thing I've taken away from my job as an educator is very early on in literacy and in teaching students to be fluent speakers of any language, we teach them how to scoop up phrases. So, you wouldn't say peanut butter and jelly, you'd say peanut butter and jelly. So when I'm working with clients, I say, like, if you know they're going to ask you a question about how you've innovated, or a lot of questions are going to automatically be like, how do you work with the team? What can you bring to the table? We practice that. If I know that, and sometimes it's even a matter of them telling me or sending it to me in an email, and then I'm kind of putting it into the words that they can say, like a script of sorts, so they've got a prepared answer. So I had a client who knew that the company was going to be asking him about a time that he faced, a difficult time that he faced in his workplace and how he overcame it. So he kind of set up the scenario for me. It was about a time that he had gone to make a presentation and it had faltered. The people that he was presenting to weren't receptive to it. So we really tried to use words like receptive, well, we didn't say failure, but like you said, fell a few paces short of what I wanted to do. So giving him those phrases to use and letting him practice. Then when he went into the interview, he felt like he had a kind of a nice handle on some phrases that he could say that made him appear more confident than he actually felt.
And to go along with that, Julie, I think that's perfect. Another common request is, what do I say in the time where I don't understand the speaker, where I couldn't catch the question, right?
Right.
So I would say, look, and this was a student becoming a client of ours, and she was preparing for an interview, and she said, hey, I made it through the stage 3 interview, and I know the interview is going to be asking a lot of tough questions, and she's got, from my research, she's got an accent, right?
Okay, yeah.
Anticipating the fact that she's not going to be able to fully catch the question. And she said, in this situation, do I play it off like I know, or do I specifically say, I can't catch you? Can you say it again? I said, yes, always ask, right?
Right.
So I said, one thing that you can say is, before I give you my answer to that question, I want to make sure I fully get it. Could you rephrase that? So there's so many variations, right?
Sure,
can you rephrase that? Can you come again? Pardon? Before I give you my answer, I want to know that I'm answering it correctly. Can you give it to me one more time? And I also said this, Julie, I don't know if you agree with me. Fact is, some people speak very fast. And Julie, I would categorize you as a very fast speaker, but very articulate, very clear. And I know your normal speed is actually faster than what we're talking right now.
Right.
I know that for a fact. But I said, look, in a situation where the speaker is speaking too fast, and correct me if I'm wrong, I said, say that it is. Say that, look, so let's say you ask me a question, right? And I would say, oh, Julie, before I give my answer, I want to be sure that I completely got your question. Could you ask me again in a bit slower tone, right? Or a bit slower pace, right? And I said, if you can say that in an interview or anything else, the fact you're trying to have a good a communication channel, right? And they're not going to be offended by the fact that you said speak slower. They'll actually appreciate it, right?
Absolutely. Because I think, like we've talked about with some of my other clients, like you said, you're going into the interview 9 times out of 10, the person who's interviewing is well aware that you're a non-native speaker, and that's a non-issue. Like you've made it, like you said, similarly, you've made it to stage 3. So they've already sussed out the fact that you're not a native speaker, and it doesn't matter. So like you said, having the ability to advocate for yourself and letting the person know that it's because you want to answer the question in a way that showcases what you're going to bring to the company, and not letting language get in the way. And, and one other tip that I've given with my clients is I said, if you feel comfortable and you feel like this isn't going to become like something that puts you in an uncomfortable position, it's very common practice in the United States for when you go to an interview that the questions are right in front of you, printed on a paper. So I've said, like, once you've gotten to stage, 2 or 3, you might even ask, if you feel comfortable, or the HR person has said, like, shoot me any questions you have, saying, like, as a non-native speaker, would there be an option for me to have a printed part of the questions on the table in front of me? Because the worst they're going to say is no. And a lot of times they're really glad to hear that you said yes. I had one client who said the HR person was like, you know what, that's a great idea, and we need to start putting that in practice. Because I've been in plenty of interviews as a native speaker and with native speakers, where my nerves have gotten the best of me. And if I hadn't had the paper to reference, I would have left off the second part of a question that I needed to answer.
Of course. Fully agree with you. And before I let you go, because we're running out of time,
Sure.
I just want to just summarize our key points, which has been, as a coach, you are personally using figurative and colorful language to help them with their, acquisition of small talk, acquisition of expressions and popular idioms. So that's huge. Okay. And number two, the power of coach, right? And you are the personalized, curated recommendation engine for the student.
Yeah.
Right? You know the best interest of the student, and you are working every day to know more about the student, as well as the student is trying to learn more about you. Right? I always say it's a two-way street here.
Right. Building relationships.
It is. And a lot of the common questions are asked, Dawn, how can I be successful with this program? Right? And I always say, have a great relationship with your coach. That's number one. It's funny because they may want to hear like, okay, focus on your self-study program, or, really read the Harvard Business Review article. Those are all must things to do. But I always put number one first, which is have a great relationship with your coach. That's number one. And number three, you and your students will actually anticipate future business situations and do role-playing exercises in class. And I wanted to highlight this point. When you do it as many sessions as I know you've been doing with your students, I have one student who's nearing 4 years with us. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, she was one of the students that can show you on one of my fingers. Like that's how early she is. Sure. But she has templates and ready to use, like, emails, presentation decks, speaking engagements, like conference calls, presentations. She has ready to use templates for her business, for her work. Sure. And that's a database of over 4 years of work with their coach. So that's the power of having a coach here at DL&Co. That's what we can do.
Absolutely.
And you are the prime example, Julie.
Well, thank you, Don. I love what I do.
Is there anything else that we can add to this before I let you go?
No, I think we've, like you said, I think we've gleaned some great points, and I was happy to come on again. I appreciate you asking me.
Well, I appreciate you, Julie. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that this is being recorded.
Yes.
All right. You have a great night, and I will catch you later.
We'll talk soon. Thank you.